All right, thank you. My name is Major Steve Gilbert. I'm the Southwest Admissions Officer up here at West Point. I can go to the next slide. So when we talk about West Point, it's important to understand that our mission and our goal is to create leaders of character that are going to commission to the United States Army. So no matter what you do at West Point, with few exceptions, by the time you graduate, unless you go to med school or another grad school opportunity, you're going to be within 12 to 18 months, you're going to be in charge of somewhere between 20 and 35 soldiers. And that we can guarantee you. So I'll talk about a lot tonight. I'll talk about tier one academics and athletics. But essentially, those are just tools that we use to create these leaders of character that are adaptable for the 21st century and the battlefield and the things that they're going to come across. Slide. All right, so West Point is located about an hour north of New York City. So if you're trying to get a little further out, West Point might be the place for you. You can be in downtown Manhattan once you get on the train in about an hour and 15 minutes. It's the oldest service academy, established in 1802, but prior to that, it was Fortress West Point during the American Revolution. So if you know your history and about Benedict Arnold trying to hand over the plans for West Point was there to keep the British from splitting the Continental Army up through the Hudson. So we have a lot of tradition at West Point. We're the first service academy. Every service academy, whether it's in this country or abroad, since then has been modeled after our template here at West Point that we established in 1802 and that we developed with our four-year engineering program from that point on. Slide. And then, I think when you think about West Point, you're going to think about history. The history that we teach was made by those that we've taught, and it really is true. So if you're thinking active members of Congress, Fortune 500 CEOs, you're going to find West Pointers. If you're talking about the current Secretary of Defense, the last Secretary of Defense, the last Secretary of State, all West Point graduates. And I think the reason for that is twofold. It's both the seriousness that we take leadership at West Point, and then also what your first job is going to be coming out into the Army. So unlike the other services, the asset that the Army brings to the battlefield is personnel. So we do have helicopters, we do have tanks, we do have some equipment, but what we have the most of is people. So when you add in the National Guard and the reserves, we have over 1 million man Army, and West Point only commissions 1,200 lieutenants every year, and that makes up about a quarter of the officer corps. So all those soldiers, they need leaders. So no matter what job you do in the Army, if you're logistics or if you're an infantry or armor officer or in med services, you're going to be in charge of soldiers. So if you're in med services, you're going to be in charge of medics. You're going to be in charge of 20 medics. So leadership is what we do at West Point, because that's what you're going to be doing as soon as you get out and graduate. Next slide. I think like was mentioned earlier, if you want to go and be a second lieutenant in the United States Army, you should absolutely apply for Army ROTC, and you should absolutely apply for West Point. But what I will say separates us from other avenues is West Point is a 47-month experience that you're going to be challenged mentally, emotionally, physically every single day. And I'll be the first to admit that is not for everyone. However, if you heard what I just said and that excites you, that's something that you think you want to do to push yourself and be the best that you can be, that's what we do at West Point. Next slide. All right, so here in white, these are the 18 jobs that you can do coming out of West Point. So you'll choose one of these. Even if you end up going to grad school, unless you go to be a doctor, if you go to grad school, get a scholarship out of West Point, you're still going to choose one of these 18 jobs in white. So what I like to stress, I myself am an infantryman, Ranger School, Ranger Regiment, Airborne School, all that stuff that you might traditionally think of as being an Army job. However, I like to highlight, it takes a lot to get that soldier 7,000 miles away crawling through the mud. If you want to be that soldier crawling through the mud, you can absolutely do that. We have plenty of jobs for that, but there's a lot that goes into that. There's logistics, there's finance, we have engineers, we have aviation, fixed wing and rotary wing, or helicopters and airplanes. So a lot of different options as far as that goes to support the Army. And then once you've been in the Army for 2 or 3 years, there's a whole nother list. We've mentioned a few of them here, but even longer, probably longer than all these names on this list. You can go into the JAG Corps, you can go into functional areas if you want to be in an embassy somewhere. around the world. Take advantage of the language that we're going to teach you at West Point, special operations, that sort of thing. Those become available to you after you've been in the Army for a year or two. Slide. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. A little bit about Cadet Life. So we're ranked #1 in the nation every year that I've been here. So I've been here for 3 years. It's never, you know, if you're looking at best engineering schools, you know, our nuclear and our civil programs usually bump around in the top 5. Some years we're 1, some years we're 3. But what never changes are access to professors, and it comes from the way we're structured. So your average class size will be 15 to 18 cadets in a class with you, and by the time you get to your major, I'd say it's closer to about 11 or 12 in every class. So that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? If you don't do your homework, it's hard to hide in a classroom of 13 people. But the advantage is every teacher, every instructor you have, professor is going to be there in your class teaching you. There's no such thing as TAs or teaching assistants at West Point. There's also no such thing as freshman English when you're in an auditorium of 500 people. So you're going to get, you know, that top level instruction from your instructors. 30% of our faculty are PhD professors, civilians, just like you find in a normal college or institution. The other 70% are split between career professors who have essentially changed their branch. They're in the Army, but they're going to be professors the rest of their time at West Point. And then adjunct faculty like myself with advanced degrees who are on 2 to 3 year assignments. But what that does is that means that you've got 70% of your faculty probably were in your shoes at one point. They've all been at least company commanders in charge of somewhere between 100 and 200 soldiers on a daily basis, and now all they have are maybe 2 or 3 sections of 15 students that you know, they have total access to. So there's no such thing as office hours or anything like that. You know, there's stories of cadets reaching out to their teachers, you know, the night before a graded event and asking questions, and the teacher saying, "Hey, just come by my house. I'm right down the road, and we'll talk this thing out." Not unheard of at West Point. Additionally, as I mentioned, you can get a scholarship coming out of West Point. So we're #5 all time for Rhodes Scholars, Gates Marshall Fulbright, all those things. If you want to go to Oxford for a year, take advantage of that, and then catch up with your peers at Fort Rucker because you're going to flight school or whatever your job in the Army is. You can absolutely do that. Slide. All right, so we have 36 academic majors at West Point. So although we are known to be a Tier 1 engineering school, and you're going to end up taking some engineering no matter what at West Point, that's the most majors of any service academy. So you'll be might be surprised to see quite a few liberal arts on that slide there. But we give you the most options, and that's kind of true of Army ROTC and the Army in general, right? Because again, your job in the Army is to lead people. And so we have a little more flexibility in your major choices. And if you really want to dig in the weeds on this, you know, go to our website under academics, and you can look at all the majors and minors that are offered. Slide. All right, for your military journey, your first 2 summers are pretty lockstep. You're going to go to basic training. We're going to teach you everything you need to know to be a cadet: how to walk, how to talk, how to qualify in your M4 weapon system, how to do land navigation, that sort of thing. Your second summer, we're doing team level operations out at Camp Buckner. You're getting a little cold, a little wet, and a little tired, and that's kind of where the laboratory that we use for leadership development. It works, believe me. And then your next 2 summers, you're gonna have a whole lot more opportunities to go and do different things. We send cadets all across the country and the world, where we've got Army posts shadowing platoon leaders. We also do a little miniature ranger school at West Point. That's cadet troop leader training, or sorry, cadet leader development training. And then you'll do your leadership development summer, where you're either a senior platoon leader in charge of 30 other cadets, a company commander in charge of maybe 100, and you're training those cadets in the freshman class as they come on board that year, or the sophomore class when they do that cadet field training. Then we have military qualification schools. You know, if you want to go to airborne school, air assault, I had the opportunity to go to survival school, SEER school while I was at West Point. I went to sniper employment while I was at West Point. And then we'll have individual advanced development. So those look a lot like internships. If you go to the next slide, I can continue talking about those a little bit. We do a semester abroad exchange programs. Obviously, there's a language element to these. So this will be your junior year. If you choose to go to one of these opportunities, it's going to be, you know, in a language that you're familiar with. Depending on the relationship we have with that country, it could be at a military institution or just a civilian college in that country. And then we do semester exchanges with the other service academies as well. I mentioned those internships. These things are really cool. Every time I think I found a cadet that did the coolest one, that someone comes up with something better. So they're going to congressional offices, the White House. You know, if they're an econ major, they might go to this New York Stock Exchange for 3 weeks during the summer. NASA, FBI, they're going to Quantico. Really some neat opportunities, usually through the academic departments, just because that's what cadets are interested in. But you can obviously be outside something you're specializing in. And then I mentioned military development schools. Some pretty cool opportunities that if you're in the Army, you have to be in a pretty specialized unit to get. We send cadets to Chilean Mountain Warfare School, and some pretty neat opportunities there. Slide. A little bit. I think I'm running low on time, so we'll go ahead and move through. Next slide. This slide is a great picture, probably that you can use for most of the academies. This is how we evaluate candidates' files. So if you're really wondering how to leverage your time in the next, couple months, 60% is academic. That's the most important. Those are your standardized test scores and your GPA. 30% is leadership. Those are your high school athletics. Are you a varsity letterman or woman? Are you a captain? Those things matter. What are your extracurriculars? We have school official evaluations. Those are kind of our replacement for letters of recommendation. And then the candidate fitness assessment, which is shared by all academies. We do require videos for the push-ups and the pull-ups or flexed arm hang if you're a female and you choose that event. And that one's pass-fail, so that's important to note. Slide. All right, and the summer leaders experience, if there's anybody out there that we might have a few people attending it, that's a summer camp we do at West Point. It's usually the first 2 weeks of June, and the window's closed right now, but if you're a little younger, starting February 1st next year, you can open a file and apply through March 15th for the summer leadership experience. Slide. And then make sure you like and follow us. I think we're out in the clear with COVID, but you never know. As things were changing with our trips and our visits at West Point, the best place to kind of get the current information was always Facebook or Instagram. That's where we're kind of posting the latest and greatest stuff. So I'm going to post my contact info in the chat, and if you have questions throughout the briefs, go ahead and drop a question in there, and I'll make sure to get them answered. And then I think I'm followed by Army ROTC, and then it will be Lieutenant rounds.